I've received a number of requests to do a guided tour of the inside of my Paradox, and I've been going to do it on almost every raid I've been on for the last 3 months, but in the hurly-burly of the raid I've never gotten around to do it. So I thought, now that I've unpacked it and cleaned it up after the festive season raid to the Sand Islands, I would make the video as the last thing before I covered up the boat until the next outing. It's a bit hard to know where to start this exercise, so what I'm going to do is start in one corner of the boat and work my way around. I'll just shut the hatch to stop backlighting issues, and we'll come round to the back corner of the boat and start there. So this is the port rear quarter of the boat, and the shelf on the side of the boat, and the plug you see there is a plug leading to the stern solar panel, and then coming around is a bit of a bag that I put all my loose valuables in, including one I just realised I'm sitting on, being the plug for where the cable for the solar panel comes in. So coming around from there, we come to the essentials: the bottle opener, the pint glass, the Raid stubby holder, the sunscreen, and the emergency instructions for the radio. And then around from there, there's a spot to stick my phone and car keys. To the back is a collection of cables for all the recharging. There's 2 power packs in there for doing recharging independent of the main battery of the boat, so it doesn't work as a drain on that. And then down below there, well, first of all, that's the steering line, and that's a cleat to hold the steering line, so you get some hands free for a moment. It's duplicated on the other side of the boat behind me. And down below is the storage area where I keep all of the food canisters. There's nothing there at the moment, obviously, because I'm not sailing, but I always leave a canister of basically dehydrated food in case I do what I am prone to do sometimes and leave everything at home. So coming forward from there is the plug for the main solar panel, and it snakes around and goes out through the sliding hatch, and there's a little cowling up above there to stop water coming in. And following it all the way back here, we have a few little hooks to hold things up, including the detachable boom vang, which tacks from one side of the boat to the other and holds the boom down, stops the lug sail twisting as much, and I've been able to get an extra knot of boat speed out of that little gadget. And coming around here, we have the start of the electronics and a convenient place to stick the wind indicator when not being used. And this is a PowerTech solar panel controller, and this little bit of plastic here is so it's covered up so the lights don't keep me awake when I'm trying to sleep. The switches on each side, this one is the isolation of the main battery, so it turns off all the power. It's like a master switch, if you like. And on the other side is a switch that sends power to the electric outboard at the back if the battery at the back is going flat. Down below that is the navigation centre. It's an iPad Air running Navionics software, and there's a few other handy little apps, including an anchor drag app and wind apps and so on. Just behind the navigation station is the main switchboard, and coming along we've got the under deck lights at the rear end of the boat, and if I just swing back you can see those there. It's duplicated again under the deck on the other side. Turn that on, we've then got the main cabin light, which if I just swing up here you can see up above me, and then the one that's already on is the forward light in the forward compartment. Then along from there we've got the navigation lights. There's obviously green to starboard, red to port, and there's a white light on the back of the boat, and the switch up here behind it can isolate the port and starboard lights from the anchor light on the back, so you don't have to run all 3 lights all the time. Then coming on from there, we have the ballast pump, which I'll come to when we reach the other side of the boat. And then the forward one is the general purpose DC power, which operates any cigarette type plug-in device, and there's 2 USB ports just around the side of the switchboard. And for example, that runs the fan here, which keeps it cool when there's not too much wind coming through the vent box. Also up in this area of the boat we have the gimbaled teacup holder, which also doubles as a beer mug holder. And coming down we have the fire extinguisher and the EPIRB. And in the area below the EPIRB in here is a collection of hats, and there's 2 inflatable life jackets and a life jacket for the forward hand Georgie. Coming along from there is a bag to hold all the loose ends of the ropes when you're not sailing. The switch here is to control the speed of the fan. In the bag above is the wet weather gear, the most unused section of the boat because you simply never get wet sailing a Paradox. But I keep it just in case it's raining when I'm bringing up. Beneath that, going up to the front, there's 2 self-inflating camping mats which I sleep on the floor of the main cabin. And coming around in a little difficult area of the boat, not useful much for anything, is the sleeping bag, and I stick a bag containing all change of clothes and so on above it. Then we come to the business part of the boat. So there's the fan, and I'll just swing that out of the way, and below it are all the sailing controls. So starting from here we have the roller reefing line, which is an endless loop onto the halyard over here. The halyard's 2 to 1 to make it easy to get up, and the line comes back and it ends up coming around up and becoming the furling line, so you never have too much loose rope hanging around the bottom of the boat. The 2 lines next to it, this one is the topping lift, which lifts up the inner and outer ends of the boom to take the weight off the whole system to make the task of rolling and unrolling easier. And the last one is you can probably think of it as a choke. It pulls the yard up onto the mast and stops the rig oscillating going through waves, and it also enables you to get leech tension on a lug sail by holding the yard onto the mast, and so it can't come backwards as you pull on the sheet. Beneath that we have a Plastimo compass, and beneath that is the dehumidifier, and it's a very useful little gadget. I got it on Amazon. It's designed for keeping display cabinets dehumidified, and the inside of this boat is not much bigger than a display cabinet, so it actually works quite well, and it actually sucks moisture out of the air, and you can see there's water in the bottom there, and that's how much water it's sucked out of the air after coming home from sailing. That's about 12 hours work, and that would otherwise be that horrible clammy wet feeling on all fabrics like the carpeted floor of the main cabin, and any sort of polished surface. So the inside of the Paradox is always kept very dry. Then it's probably worth having a bit of a look at the vent box itself, so I'll just quickly take the fan out and you sort of have a bit of a look in there. Now you can see that's the roller reefing line coming in from the outside. The little white thing there is the hook holding the air vent on, so you can unhook that and remove the air vent to get access to the control lines. You can see I should get a better view. Oh, that's, you can see the topping lift and my little choke device coming through there, and that one over here is the halyard coming back down through the deck. You can't actually see the mast step. You can almost see it, but It's right down the bottom of a pyramid structure. So you're looking down, you come down from the deck down to the bottom, and when it gets to the bottom, the mast step is about 9 inches up from the bottom, and there's a hole through the mast step all the way up through the bottom of the boat. So any water that comes in through the hole for the mast or the air vent simply goes straight down out the bottom of the boat, while the air coming through the air vent is held back by the baffle, and it ends up just blowing through into the cabin, assisted by the fan, which I will now replace and have it aiming on me because it's quite hot sitting here in the driveway. Now, moving around, we come to what is described on the plans as the stateroom, although it's anything but, really, and you look at the size. Now, right up the front contains a very large paint bucket, which I use as the general throwaway spot. So beer bottles, cans, garbage bags, all gets thrown up there. And you might think, well, that's a silly place to put it, but it isn't, because it's quite hard to get to. Well, it's out of the way, I meant to say, and to get to it, I don't actually go up there. I just use this claw to pick up the stuff and get it out. And the other device sticking up into the front is the bimini top, and there's the back legs of it are there, and the front legs are detached, so it's easy to get in and out, and they're underneath the floor at the back of the boat. Coming around the top, we've obviously got the claw, and beneath that is a bag containing my seat for sitting around the campfire and drinking. And coming down below, you can see a coiled up garden hose there, which is hooked onto the pump during the tank pump out operations. Coming around from there is a 100 amp hour battery with a bit of foam rubber on the top, so I can actually sit on there without short circuiting anything. And as far as the electrics go, that's the plug I hook the charger onto, and there is also a cigarette type thing here which connects to a cable coming from the car, so the fridge freezer, the brass monkey fridge freezer, is able to operate without draining the main battery during towing of the boat. And in terms of how do I get into the fridge easily to open it, well, it's actually quite easy. I've got a bit of a line rigged up here, and you just simply pull on the line, and there's a cleat up there, holds it open, and you have the fridge freezer, and you just basically lean in sideways and rummage around, and you can find what you want. A little trick I have found is for the milk bottle for making tea. It's just a very small bottle, and I hook I've wrapped a ribbon onto it essentially, and I leave the ribbon hanging out, so you just grab the ribbon and give it a tug, and out comes the milk bottle, and you don't have to actually go up there. So I've managed to put that into there. So there you go. So coming along from there, we have a general purpose. Oh, and while I'm up there, that's the line, the rope you see going across the top is the steering line going round the other side of the boat back to the tiller at the back. So coming around here, we have the general purpose storing area. It contains some paper towels, some pads for the dog's drink and water bowl, the first aid kit, garbage bags, toilet paper. Mental note, we're running out, I have to get some more in. And then we come to the ballast pump, which has a number of valves, and depending on how you turn the valves, it will either pump water in or water out of the ballast tank. And it ultimately, the in hose hooks on to the garden type fitting there. The water tank itself is below the carpeted floor. It's a 75 litre water tank, and I only put about 20 litres of water in because it simply doesn't need 75 litres of ballast. There's about 200 kilograms of lead in the bottom of the boat, and that's more than enough for stability purposes. I've got a heel gauge at the bottom of the compass, and I've never seen it go beyond 30 degrees, other than the one time I attempted to capsize the boat just to see how hard it would be. And it was very hard. The mast probably touched the water for a second and a half, and then it popped back up again. And that took me sitting on the wrong side of the boat, and 30 knot wind, full sail up, side onto the wind, and it was very hard. It's a very stiff boat despite its narrow beam. So coming around along here, there's 3 foam rolls, which are the curtains. So rather than having curtains, they simply are shaped to fit in the spaces of the windows, so you can go to sleep at night and you don't get woken up by the sun coming up. Coming around here, we have a caravan type water, and that's my little sink, so it doesn't sink into the bottom of the boat. And you might be wondering what this little piece of aluminium here is. Well, what it is, it just slides down like so, and it's got little legs on it, which it's a bit hard to operate with one hand, but basically they held in by shock cord, and it pops out like so. So you've got then a bit of a frame, and at this point I'll just quickly pause the film while I get the device it's meant to hold. So there it is. That's what it's for. It basically just holds a gimbal gas-made stove. So I'm able to make cups of tea as I go along, and when not in use it just folds up. It's got a little thread here to stop it dropping off accidentally, but to get it off is actually quite easy. You just push it off. It's fallen out, but it's stored up the back end of the boat, and the legs just quite literally just, if I can do it one-handed, they just pop off like that, held on with a bit of shock cord. And likewise on the back end, this is easier two-handed, but there you go, like so. Then you just lift the other end off, and the whole thing basically slides up like so, and it sits snugly there out of the way, so you've got the full length of the cabin to stretch out in when you go to sleep. And I'll quickly put this back on before I lose it. Because one of the things I have noticed on a boat of this size, it's very easy to lose stuff. So, coming along from there, I've already been through that, but the sink, but behind the sink is the bag holding the main sheet, again to keep it out of the way while you're trying to sleep. Now, above the stove area there is the scotch bar, which has become somewhat legendary. I've noticed I've actually mucked up. Oh no, they're all basically in order. I seem to have lost one of the foam inserts, but anyway, I can fix that up at a later date. So there's a selection of 6 scotches of scotch glass, and then coming around from there is it's a winch holder off a yacht, but it's a good convenient hooking place for the VHF radio and camera accessories like the selfie stick. Also up next to that is the stereo system, a Bluetooth stereo. So there's music everywhere I go when I'm sailing, and you can hear me coming a mile away usually. We've then got the ratchet block for the main sheet. It comes down to a cleat down here, and you can see the red line which comes to a cleat just as on the other side before it disappears out the back and goes round onto the tiller. And then the green and white line is the main sheet coming in through the transom. So there's the connection point for pumping water in and out. And then along the top deck here we've got a few useful things. There's the wet ones for wiping stuff up quickly. I've got the sailing gloves. I've got a GoPro attachment for cameras. I've got a little bit of repair stuff. I've got lens cleaners. I've got shampoo, body wash, an elbow strap. I've got AeroGuard, and a pair of binoculars, a sound horn, and of course the raid flag when it's not being flown. down below that area is another storage area which contains a couple of things: washing up, a spare gas bottle, detergent, thing for lighting the stove, a scrubbing brush, and so on. And then the next container is something I learnt from my wife, who passed away earlier this year after a battle with cancer, but towards the end we had to bath her in bed, and I discovered these things. And I carry a couple of packets of them and a few flushable wipes, and you can actually give yourself a pretty good shower with those without actually having a shower. So they're all stored down here. And there's room for other stuff. Some of the food stuff sometimes spills over to here. We then come to the back end of the boat, and that's the seat that you sail from. One of the major discoveries I've made sailing the boat is that whilst you can sit on it like that in light weather, when the breeze comes up, it's actually better to sail like that. And because that angle is about 20 degrees, which is about the angle that the boat heels, and I've discovered that that's a very comfortable way to sail it, and it enables it to sit on the windward side of the boat when you would otherwise slide down the seat to the lee side of the boat. So the only problem is when you tack, you've got to sort of bring it forward, then lift up the other side and plonk it up the other side, but it's worth doing. It actually assists to make the boat go a bit quicker. But anyway, for the moment I'll just leave it down to give a bit of access into the back of the boat here, and I'll slide the hatch shut again to get rid of the light problems. So I've got the two cushions that's used as a pillow. You might wonder why I carry two. Well, that's because when I had one, Georgie used to fight with me for the cushions, so you've got to have two, one for me, one for the dog. Then under the back, first of all, you can see the tiller lines coming back onto the tiller, which goes throughout the back. You can see the vent hole in the back of the boat there. It's a standard inspection port dinghy type, which I've cut a section out of so I can just spin a PVC flap open and shut to let the air blow through. It's shut at the moment because I keep the boat shut when it's not being used, so the dehumidifier does its job really well. The tiller has a sliding out extension, so if you get sick of holding onto the line you can steer it the old-fashioned way. But generally going forward you use the lines most of the time. The tiller extension's best for when you're under power, when you're standing up. Then at the back of the boat we've got the two halves of the porta potty. So to go to the toilet, basically, well, usually this wouldn't be here, and it'll be up the front on the gimbal, but you just got to reach around, pull each half out, starting with the one on the left, which is the bottom, and the other one on the top. It takes about 30 seconds to assemble. You do your business, break it in half and put it back. And that works quite well. Then in the back here we have the cooking utensils on this side. If I can get my finger into it, down here. There's a kettle, there's a bucket, there's a basin. You can see a bit of a cutting board there. All the crockery is underneath that, the plates. While on this side, if I just move the stove for a moment, there's the other cooking utensils, the bowls and so on there. I've got the microfiber towel there. This device here is the solar charger for the outboard battery, which is when the boat's sailing, it's actually up on the deck out the back. There's two fenders to hang over the side, the pots and pans down there, and last but not least there's this device, which is a sand anchor, which I don't know whether people are familiar with, but it's basically a screw that you screw down into the sand and hook your stern line in, so you pull the rear of your boat into the beach, and that coupled with an anchor buddy is quite effective. I used to have an anchor in the back here, but I never used it, so or hardly ever used it, and the sand anchor is much lighter, much more convenient. It doesn't take up any space. So that is basically the back end of the boat, and we're right round where we started from. So this leads us to the last two bits of the boat. There's two underfloor areas. And just swing around under there. That's a plastic box, which actually the little gasmate stove came in, which I use as a toolkit, and because it's not totally waterproof, but it's certainly splash proof, and any water that makes its way into the bilge won't affect any of the tools. And if I can hold this up effectively, you can come around, you can see the start of the lead ballast, so it's duplicated on the other side, and it's also underneath the areas where the life jackets and the foam rubber blinds are kept. There's similar amounts of lead, so that's the ballast, and they just drop into place. Whilst on the other side we have the frame for the bimini and the paddle, and as you can see, there's if I can get the camera into place, there's lead up the front, and there's also I think a baler bucket there somewhere. Not sure where it went. There it is, over there. Not that I've ever had to use it. I think the most water that's ever made it in here is about probably 2 cups, and whilst they're not there at the moment, I normally have a couple of small sponges lying around, and they contain any splash water that makes it into here. So that's basically it. That's sort of a last bit of an overview. One thing I didn't mention was this little bag here, which used to hold my wife's ketamine infusion kit at her bedside, which now is a very useful place to put your sunglasses, because let me tell you, there are many ways to lose your sunglasses in this boat. So anyway, that's about it. I hope you all enjoyed that. If anybody's got any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me.